Let's get some more people talking now. Zerlina Maxwell is here. She's a political analyst and staff writer for Loop21.com. That is a website with politics, news, and whatnot. Hello, at Zerlina Maxwell on Twitter if people want to tweet. Good to have you here this morning.
Thank you very much.
And Ford O'Connell is the chairman of Civic Foreman PAC. He is the co-founder of Project Virginia, former presidential campaign advisor. At Ford O'Connell, 2 N's, 2 L's, if you want to tweet him as well. Good morning. Nice to see you.
Thank you for having me on, Harris.
Let's start with last night's 8-vote slim victory. That doesn't even really get the word slim going, right? Slim to me is 100. 8 is a sliver. Your thoughts?
To be perfectly honest, it was a good night for Mitt Romney, but it was a fantastic night for Rick Santorum. In a lot of ways, he pulled off one of the greatest political comebacks in recent memory. I mean, you got to realize that just 2 weeks ago, he was down in single digits, and last night he essentially tied in Iowa. It was an unbelievable night, and it left many of us with our heads scratching.
All right, so you're across the aisle, Zerlina, and you're looking, and you're President Obama. What are you taking away from the contest that just happened?
Well, I definitely think that the Democratic Party has known for a while now that Mitt Romney was the strongest and is the strongest candidate to match up with Obama in the fall. I think that they're probably looking at this saying, well, Mitt Romney eked out a win. He's still going to be a formidable candidate after Iowa. But I think that really we need to look at the fact that Rick Santorum, his surge was at the right time. It wasn't necessarily that he has so much more that's unique from, say, a Rick Perry, for example, minus all the gaffes. But I think that Rick Santorum surged right at the right moment.
Why do you need to know that?
Well, because once the surging candidate went out in front, they were under intense media scrutiny and then fell in the polls. But their support did not go to Mitt Romney. It went to another surging candidate.
Oh, interesting. Ford, your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm going to say something. Rick Santorum last night, his closing speech was fantastic. It really appealed to blue-collar independents. The fact that it discussed jobs and manufacturing is something he can build on. If he can get the resources and staff in place, we could have a long, drawn-out primary. That said, right now, Mitt Romney is still the front runner, but it's up to Romney to sort of close the gate in New Hampshire and come out with a strong win heading into South Carolina.
You know, I want you to, if you can, answer specifically to what Zerlina's talking about, because I think it's a really interesting point. When people were given an opportunity to go someplace else, they didn't go to Mitt Romney. Why not, Ford?
Well, I think that Mitt Romney really has a stranglehold on establishment Republicans, and it's up to Team Romney to really make the sell to Tea Party folks and to social conservatives. Right now, the anti-Romney voter out there is looking for a candidate to consolidate behind, and last night they chose Rick Santorum. The question for Santorum is, can he keep them consolidated? And if he can, this primary is going to go well beyond Super Tuesday.
Yeah. Well, okay, so now New Hampshire. We're moving forward now. And I don't want to gloss over the fact that you're from Virginia, and there's a whole battle. Actually, you know what? Let's step back, because in case we lose you off the satellite bird, I don't want to not ask this question. Virginia, what is up with the balloting process there? You only have 2 of these candidates on the ballot, something about 10,000 signatures. Newt Gingrich is screaming, well, one of his helpers was committed fraud, and he only got 9,000, should have gotten 10,000. 1,000 signatures didn't count. Is Virginia too restrictive in terms of getting people on the ballot?
Well, Virginia definitely had a primary ballot debacle, and I think they're going to have to review how they do that. I know that Zerlina is going to come out there and say rules are rules, but here's what really concerns me about the Virginia primary debacle. With only 2 candidates on the ballot, turnout's going to be low. And remember, in Virginia, we don't register by party. And what concerns me here is with no competitive Democratic primary on the other side and no real likely high turnout on the Republican side, this could hurt the eventual Republican nominee as we look to identify voters in a very important battleground state, because this presidential primary on the Republican side has always been a key tool every 4 years in Virginia to really identify voters. And Virginia is going to be a tough slog, Chris, but we can't win the White House without winning Virginia.
All right. I don't want anybody to think that I'm not raising my children or cooking for my husband, but I am a wonk. So I'm watching everything all the time. And this morning I heard John Huntsman say, no one will be thinking about Iowa. We're all focused on New Hampshire. Is that even possibly true? It's not even 24 hours. I think that's what he hopes, because he got less than 1%. But anyway, let's focus on New Hampshire. Let's bring back the panel now. Zerlina Maxwell on set with me. She's a political analyst and staff writer for Loop21.com. That's a news website with political, entertainment, and all sorts of news. And Ford O'Connell is the chairman of Civic Forum PAC. He's the co-founder of Project Virginia, former presidential campaign advisor to, my notes don't say to whom.
John McCain.
Well, there you go. Okay, well, that's important. Let's talk about that a little bit. Rick Santorum, who did very well in Iowa last night, I read this morning in response to the fact that McCain had endorsed Romney, said, well, he's a moderate. That reinforces McCain's view of the world. What is McCain's view of the world, and how important is this endorsement, do you think?
I think it's very important for Mitt Romney because John McCain really took, defeat from the jaws of victory there in New Hampshire. And New Hampshire really is what, spurred McCain on. New Hampshire, South Carolina, and Florida. And without that sort of spark in New Hampshire, John McCain would have lost the nomination last time around. And I think for a lot of folks in New Hampshire, that's very important for Mitt Romney. But I will say this about Mitt Romney, the Ron Paul youth vote's going to be out there. He's competing against that. John Huntsman could be a wild card because he's competing for many of the same voters as Mitt Romney, and that could really help play into that sort of anti-Romney voting bloc, and whether or not Rick Santorum, who I do not think is going to win New Hampshire, but could still make a very strong showing.
Yeah, you know what? I'm just getting on my berry right now, and that's berry for BlackBerry for all the cool folk. South Carolina Tea Party Coalition is going to hold its first ever convention to coincide with the Myrtle Beach Republican debate, which is coming up. Michele Bachmann, representative out of Minnesota, was doing so well with Tea Party people. And now she is set to make this big announcement at 11 a.m. Eastern, conceivably following her poor showing in Iowa last night. She could tell us a whole lot of things, but I think if we use our crystal ball, we can probably figure out what she's going to say, but we won't telegraph it. Zerlina, in your opinion, what does this say about the Tea Party? She could have found her strongest showing in South Carolina. Did she read the tea leaves somehow?
Well, I've been thinking for a while now that the height of the Tea Party perhaps was in 2010, and having Rick Santorum and Mitt Romney be the top two candidates coming out of Iowa is particularly telling as far as the strength currently of the Tea Party movement. And I think that as we go on, the media especially will want a two-man race. They'll want to match up head-to-head. And I think that the other candidates...
Wait, you're putting it on us? Do you think we're the only people who want a two-person race?
No, I think that that is the most likely outcome, especially given the fact that money is so important, although Santorum is definitely lagging behind in that area. But I think that we'll want a two-man matchup, and Perry and Bachmann, who likely would have attracted those Tea Party voters in South Carolina and perhaps even in Florida, their weak showing in Iowa really damaged them. And I think that...
So where does the Tea Party go now? Who will they like, Ford?
Well, that's the question. I think they're most likely going to see who the anti-Romney voting bloc consolidates on. Let me say one more thing real quick, and that is there is no way the media wants a two-man race. What's going on between Gingrich and Romney is better than Jerry Springer. Everybody's duking it out, and last night we were hanging on our seats for 8 votes. Come on, this is very exciting, and this is the craziest primary I've ever seen, and we're only one nominating contest down. The question is, yes, you're right, who will the Tea Party get behind? We don't know yet, but we do know that Santorum's looking good right now.
All right, I'm seeing lots of things all over the live chat this morning. Chris Gibbons says if Romney is another McCain, he'll pass. McCain is a softie from Richard Barrett. Bachmann kept sticking her foot in her mouth from Graphic God. Bachmann is a nice lady, but I don't see her as president from Crash. I've long suspected Crash was not his or her given name at birth, but I like it. And Newt is unique. He is more of a strategist than the others. Randy Cady. Romney will lose. He is not a winner. Newt will be on top. Rick will win. The media gives him a chance. If the media gives him a chance, Roy Ashley. Sarah Palin advised this was not her time. Best advice given so far, Frederick H. I'm not sure if that's about Michele Bachmann or what. Ford, your thoughts?
Well, Michele Bachmann was a great candidate because the GOP needs to make greater outreach to women. But I'm going to be perfectly honest with you.
Wow, wait a minute. Is that how you, what if the show stops right now? Is that the only soundbite you want to hit the airwaves for?
No, I do want to say that Michele Bachmann was a good candidate, but the day after the straw poll victory, in all fairness to her, she wasn't going to win. She never was going to win the nomination. But
Why?
She brought great ideas.
Why not?
Because she just could not get the national appeal needed to defeat President Obama. Remember, electability is still a key factor here, and that's what inevitably pushed Mitt Romney over the edge last night with the 8 votes. And Michele Bachmann could never harness that national appeal needed, but she was important to the conversation because she was a strong conservative woman.
All right, Randy Katie says, I could see Bachmann back in 2016 with a better portfolio. You know, you mentioned, you dropped the W, the woman word. So and you know, no matter where
just
you are
for you,
politics,
Harris.
that seems, I know, right? I can hear. That seems to cross over all lines. And you saw people like the late Geraldine Ferraro, God rest her soul, Hillary Clinton, Sarah Palin. You saw them coming together on the same issue, and that is that it ain't easy for the girls.
Right. I think it's definitely true that Bachmann faced sexism in the media, but at the same time, I don't think that her policy stances necessarily attract women voters just because she doesn't attract women voters just because she's a woman. I think that her policy stances actually make her less attractive to women. Really? In many ways.
Well, I disagree with that, considering many of her policy stances are very closely aligned to Sarah Palin, who did an incredible job pushing women across the line in the Midwest to John McCain in 2008.
Ford, what role does Michele Bachmann play in the Republican Party? She just can't quietly retreat back to Minnesota. Although Norm Coleman pretty much went into the secret witness protection program by going back, but I don't think she disappears like that. So what role does she play in the GOP?
She needs to be a strong conservative voice as we look to crown or to have the GOP nominee win. But I also am going to tell you, she's got to go back to Minnesota right now, and she's got a very tough House race for re-election, given what the wonderful Democrats in Minnesota have been doing with redistricting. So, you know, she's not clear that she needs to turn her focus back to Minnesota, get her house in order, win that seat back, and go out there and stump for the eventual Republican nominee and help us attract women voters.
Let's talk cash for a second, because I think this you guys are great on the live chat this morning, by the way. My God, our viewers are just so on. It's like they had extra green tea. Ray Gresham says, too bad the best ones don't have the funds. This is about money now. You want to go up against Mitt Romney, you better have like some serious cash. So this is really about cash now.
Yes, especially after Citizens United and super PACs putting millions and millions of dollars into attack ads. I think that's really what did Newt Gingrich in, and he was apparently very upset about that last night in his speech. So like he said, it is going to be entertaining with Newt Gingrich. However, I still think that we're going to see a two-man race.
Does Santorum have money?
No, he doesn't have money, but I'm going to tell you this. He's going to get some money if his web page, if his donation page doesn't keep crashing, because he's going to wind up on the magazine cover newspaper for the next week all across America.
Who's going to run the organization, though? Because, you know, I was looking this morning at who's bought ads, because that's really kind of how I look at it. I mean,
New Hampshire.
There are a whole lot of ways you can look at whether or not a campaign is far-reaching. But I'm looking at who spent the money on ads, and Santorum is buying some ads. Some of these other candidates aren't buying any. Mitt Romney's buying a ton of ads in all these different states, including Florida.
No, absolutely right. There is no question from a fundraising and organizing perspective, Mitt Romney's best position. To your ad point, though, remember, a lot of the airtime in New Hampshire is already bought up. So when Rick Santorum has his money, it's going to be real hard to get on the New Hampshire airwaves. That said, though, he could get some money in place in South Carolina. And we all know that if you want to win Florida due to the expansive terrain, you're going to need a top-notch ad campaign. And you're going to need some serious ad strategists to help you buy time and to put those ads out there.
All right, Zerlina, you're going to stick around a little bit longer than we can keep Ford O'Connell today. He's on the satellite, so I want to kick him one more here. Brian Conway says, of New York, if you mix Romney and Santorum, you've got just right of center, just about where the country is. A final word from you, Ford.
Well, I think that both candidates have to look at that. I think Rick Santorum is going to have to say, how do I get establishment Republicans and moderates on there? His speech last night on jobs and manufacturing was a good start and a good launching point. Mitt Romney has to scratch his head and say, okay, I've got establishment Republicans in my camp. How do I get some Tea Partiers and social conservatives to come my way? Because the sooner I get them, the more likely it is I am to win the nomination.
What does he need to talk about to do that?
I think he's going to have to talk. He's going to have to present to them an honest message of who I am, because I think a lot of people are still confused about who Mitt Romney is. And the fact that Obama's knocking him up and down the street shows that he has the credentials to get there, because Team Obama knows one thing. They want re-election. They're going to stomp on anybody in their way. All
right, Ford O'Connell, I could talk to you all day, but they say I got to let you go. So at Ford O'Connell, if you want to tweet him, good to see you, my friend. Happy New Year.
Thank you very much, Harris.